everyone's been arguing about Morph's redesign in X-Men 97. Almost nobody's talking about the fact that this character can casually out-heal Wolverine, out-shapeshift Mystique, and survive being sliced clean in half. Morph might be the single most underrated mutant in the entire franchise, and today we're breaking down exactly why, his real origin, the full extent of his powers, the science behind his body, and why Season 2 finally gave him the spotlight he's been owed for 30 years. Morph's story starts behind the scenes, not in the comics. When the original X-Men animated series was being built in the 90s, the creative team needed a character who could die in the pilot to raise the stakes early. The obvious choice on paper was Thunderbird, but the writers didn't want to kill off the show's only Native American character right out of the gate. So instead, they built a brand new character for that purpose. Someone loosely inspired by an obscure hero named Changeling who'd met a heroic death in the comics decades earlier. Naming conflicts with a DC character forced a rename, and that's how Kevin Sidney became Morph. What's wild is that a character invented purely to be a sacrificial lamb ended up becoming one of the emotional cores of the entire franchise, largely because of the bond he developed with Wolverine before that death ever happened.
Wolverine! Pull back!
In the original continuity, Morph doesn't actually die during that early Sentinel mission. He's left for dead after the team retreats under Cyclops' orders, badly wounded and abandoned in the field. Mister Sinister finds him first. Sinister heals him, then brainwashes him into a weapon aimed squarely at the X-Men. For a while that plan works, Morph turns against his former teammates, tries to help kidnap Cyclops and Jean Grey, and ends up being used as a tool in Sinister's schemes in the Savage Land. But the conditioning never fully holds. Morph fights his own programming from the inside, eventually breaks free with Xavier's help, and turns on Sinister alongside the team he was forced to betray.
What's making me do this?
Here's where Morph gets a lot more interesting than a typical shapeshifter. After being rescued and cleared for active duty, he insists on rejoining the X-Men, and his comeback mission, fittingly, is another Sentinel operation. It goes badly. The mission triggers a full psychological collapse, and Morph freezes up completely paralyzed by what would today be recognized as textbook PTSD. He pushes through it anyway, destroys Master Mold, saves Professor X, and shuts down the Sentinel operation single-handedly, and then he walks away from the team. Not because he was forced out, but because he genuinely didn't trust himself to be a hero yet. That's a remarkably grounded arc for a character built to be background cannon fodder, a hero who has to actually earn his place back on the team on his own terms, rather than just snapping back to normal after one traumatic mission.
If it makes you feel any better, Gambit, I go in like this, huh?
Now let's get into what actually makes Morph's body so strange. His core power is full-spectrum shapeshifting. He can alter his appearance, voice, and general body shape to become almost anyone, human or otherwise, with a level of precision that puts most other shifters in the Marvel universe to shame. Compare him to Mystique, who's usually treated as the gold standard for disguise. In her classic power set, Mystique could only replicate appearance and voice. She couldn't even alter her body mass or texture until much later comic retcons gave her that ability. Morph could already do things like that decades earlier. He can pull off partial transformations too, growing something like Omega Red's tentacles or mimicking Wolverine's claws on command. The catch is that he's copying form, not function. Wolverine's claws are laced with adamantium, one of the most durable metals in the Marvel universe. Morph's imitation claws are just Morph. Same shape, none of the durability. It's the same story with any power he mimics. Visually, the look transfers. The actual ability doesn't.
What the hell's a puppy dog look?
An innocent gaze
Dripping with...
Then there's the durability angle, and this is where things get genuinely unsettling. Morph's body behaves less like flesh and more like an endlessly reshapeable material. If a limb gets severed, he doesn't need a healing factor in the traditional Wolverine sense. He can often just physically reattach the piece and restore it, something even most shapeshifters can't manage. There's a scene from the Exiles comic run where Morph gets sliced completely in half during a confrontation with a feral Wolverine fresh out of the Weapon X program, and he still recovers well enough afterward to help stitch up a badly wounded teammate using body parts reshaped into surgical tools. That's not a healing factor. That's a body that treats its own structure as optional. His control also extends slightly beyond his own skin. His costume, made of the same kind of unstable molecules used in other Marvel hero suits, shifts and adapts along with him, which suggests he has at least some influence over compatible material in his immediate surroundings, not just his own tissue. Here's a detail most casual fans miss entirely. Shapeshifting into animals doesn't just change Morph's appearance, it can drag his internal biology along for the ride. Turn into an elephant, and you might get elephant-level strength. Turn into an elephant, and you might also get an elephant's hormonal chemistry along with it. The same goes for any animal form. The physiology doesn't stop at muscle and bone. It can extend into the hormonal system itself. It's a strange, almost comedic vulnerability buried inside an otherwise terrifying power set. Shift too fast, too often, into too many different creatures, and his own body chemistry can spiral into chaos. Every overpowered ability needs a weakness. and Morph actually has two consistent ones. The first is psychological. His trauma from that early Sentinel mission doesn't just disappear, and under the wrong kind of pressure, it can resurface and compromise him in the field. The second is stranger, his scent. Across different stories, there's some disagreement about whether Morph has a detectable presence at all, but the more commonly accepted answer is that his scent stays constant no matter what form he takes. Most people would never notice, someone with Wolverine's nose absolutely would. It's a small detail, but it's the one crack in an otherwise flawless disguise. Morph's strangest storyline comes from his time with the Exiles, when he ends up sharing a body with Proteus, a reality-warping mutant so powerful that hosting him usually burns out whoever he's possessing. Morph should have been just another victim. Instead, his physiology, built to absorb constant transformation without wearing down, turned out to be uniquely suited to containing Proteus without collapsing. Over time, the arrangement evolves from a forced containment into something closer to a genuine partnership, with both entities choosing to share the same body rather than fight over it. It's one of the clearest examples in Marvel lore of Morph's body doing something almost no other mutants could survive. It's easy to treat Morph as a pure body-based power set, but he's not just a shapeshifter. He holds an advanced engineering degree from Xavier's Institute, has picked up limited telepathic and telekinetic ability along the way, and has a track record of running covert operations with real tactical intelligence. Combine that with borrowed strength from whatever he's currently copying, and the occasional borrowed ability to fly, and you get a mutant whose skill set is a lot broader than funny shapeshifter. Now, the elephant in the room. X-Men 97 redesigned Morph with a more androgynous, ambiguous appearance, and depicted the character as non-binary, and that choice split fan reaction almost instantly. The people behind the decision have framed it as a natural extension of a character whose entire identity is built around constant transformation. The argument being that if you can become anyone, gender becomes just one more shape among many, not a fixed trait. Some of the original creative team have publicly backed that reasoning, pointing to Morph's decades of shifting into characters of every gender as evidence the fluidity was baked in from the start. Critics of the change see it differently, arguing it retroactively reshapes a character who was written and conceived as male, and that shape-shifting ability doesn't automatically translate to a specific gender identity for the person underneath the powers. Both sides of that conversation are still very active in fan spaces, and reasonable people clearly land in different places on it, but it's worth understanding both the reasoning behind the decision and the pushback against it before forming an opinion either way. Which brings us to why this all matters right now. X-Men 97 Season 2's 5th episode, Weapon X, Lies and DVDs, is the first real Wolverine-centered installment of the entire series, a direct sequel to the original show's Weapon X episode, built around Logan assembling a team to infiltrate a new Weapon X facility. But in practice, it ends up being just as much a Morph episode, finally digging into the strange, decades-old bond between him and Wolverine in a way the modern series had never really done. The episode leans hard into a question the comics have circled for years without ever fully answering. Is what Morph feels for Logan genuine friendship, or something closer to unrequited love? That ambiguity is played with deliberately here, and it's arguably the strongest character work Morph has gotten in this entire series so far. The episode also introduces the Brood into this universe for the first time, complete with a visual nod to one of the character's most iconic classic comic covers, and it finally resolves Wolverine's post-adamantium storyline from Season 1, restoring his metal skeleton by the episode's end. Reactions to that resolution have been mixed. Some feel the show moved through Logan's loss of adamantium far too quickly, especially compared to how the comics spent years exploring the psychological toll of that same loss, and that the Brood, a genuinely dangerous cosmic threat, gets reduced here to little more than a plot device to force Wolverine back into the bonding tank rather than a threat treated on its own terms. Still, even with those pacing complaints, the episode succeeds at the one thing fans have wanted for years, putting Morph front and center, and proving that this character was never just comic relief. He's one of the most quietly powerful, quietly tragic figures in the entire X-Men roster, and it only took 30 years for the shows to admit it. So next time someone tells you Morph is just the goofy shapeshifter sidekick, remind them he's survived being sliced in half, hosted a reality-warping mutant without burning out, and carried an entire episode of X-Men 97 on pure emotional weight. Let me know down in the comments what you think Morph's future looks like in this show, and subscribe for the next full breakdown as Season 2 keeps going.